Part 1. Imagine spending years working, saving, and sacrificing, all to make the person you love truly happy. Imagine taking their biggest dream and turning it into reality, a dream restaurant, built with your own hands, fueled by your devotion. Now, imagine discovering that the very place you created as a symbol of your love has become the stage for their betrayal. This is the story of how I opened a Mexican restaurant in San Diego to fulfill my wife's lifelong dream, only to find out she was cheating on me with the manager I had hired myself. The story: I've never been the type of man who bragged about being perfect. In fact, I always admitted my flaws. I worked long hours, I obsessed over details, and sometimes I was too exhausted to give my wife the attention she deserved. But if there's one thing I never failed at, it was my devotion to her happiness. From the day I met her, she had this light in her eyes whenever she talked about Mexican cuisine. Her grandmother had been from Mexico, and though my wife grew up in California, she often spoke about how food was the heartbeat of her family. She would tell me stories about Sunday dinners, about tortillas made from scratch, about gatherings filled with laughter, music, and spice. Her dream was simple, yet so difficult to achieve. She wanted her own Mexican restaurant, a place not just to serve food, but to recreate that joy, that warmth, that piece of her heritage. I remember laughing once, early in our marriage, when she said, "Maybe someday I'll have my own restaurant in San Diego. Just a small one. Something cozy, filled with color and music." At the time, I thought it was just a sweet fantasy. But as the years passed, I realized she never stopped talking about it. The dream lingered in her heart. And so, when the opportunity finally came, when my business venture stabilized, when we had some savings, when a space in a lively part of San Diego opened up, I decided to do the biggest thing I'd ever done for her. I poured everything into it. I signed the lease. I called contractors. I researched the best suppliers. I traveled across the border to Tijuana to source authentic decor, tiles, hand-painted signs. I spent sleepless nights planning, budgeting, negotiating. When the place was finally ready, I invited her to see it for the first time. I'll never forget her face when she walked in. She stood in the middle of the restaurant. The colorful walls, the smell of fresh paint mixed with spices from the test kitchen, the soft music playing in the background, and she cried. Tears streamed down her face as she covered her mouth with her hands. You really did this?" she whispered. I just smiled, too choked up to speak. She hugged me so tightly I thought she'd never let go. In that moment, I felt like the luckiest man alive. I believed I had given her everything she'd ever wanted. But life has a cruel way of twisting gifts into curses. Hiring the staff. Of course, a restaurant couldn't run on love alone. We needed staff, waiters, kitchen workers, and most importantly, someone who could manage the daily chaos while we figured things out. I had experience with business, but not restaurants. I knew I couldn't do it all myself. So I put out ads, interviewed candidates, and finally found someone who seemed perfect. A man with years of restaurant experience, a polished smile, and a confidence that made him instantly likable. He spoke passionately about hospitality, about treating staff like family, about creating a place where customers would want to return again and again. My wife seemed to agree during the interview. She said his energy was exactly what we needed. So I hired him as our manager. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if that was the single biggest mistake of my life. The early days, the first few months were exhilarating. The restaurant quickly gained traction. Tourists wandered in, drawn by the colors and smells. Locals came, curious about the new spot in town. Word spread, and soon we had lines on weekends. My wife thrived in this environment. She spent her days there, helping in the kitchen, chatting with customers, curating playlists, arranging decor. She laughed more than I'd seen her laugh in years. She glowed. I was proud. Proud of her, proud of us, proud of what we had built together. But something changed. Part 2. Slowly, I've always believed that relationships I didn't want to don't fall apart overnight. She started spending more evenings little at the restaurant until even one day you look around, inventory, and realize the foundation you thought was solid has been eaten away by cracks you didn't want to see. Why wouldn't I? That's what happened. This was her dream. At first, I wanted to support I told myself nothing was wrong. But then came the late nights. My wife was busy. Nights when she wouldn't come home until after midnight. And of course, she'd be stressed. Nights when she said she wanted to be supportive, tired, not clingy, and slept in the guest room. She deserved space. Nights when her phone buzzed with messages. She brushed business as restaurants started piling up. At first, she used to come home myself and excitedly tell me about the new salsa recipe. Maybe she was overwhelmed, or about a family who left a glowing review. I tried to help more. Or about the mariachi band she but every time I did, for Friday nights, I noticed something strange. She'd talk nonstop. The way she and the manager exchanged glances. But slowly, the story stopped. They laughed at inside jokes I wasn't when I asked. How was she lit up when she walked into the room? Fine. I brushed it off. I told myself I was being paranoid. She used to leave it charging on the counter. She was happy. Unlocked. Wasn't that the whole point? Now it was always face down. Always a seed of doubt had been always in her pocket, and it was only going to grow. And then there were the nights. She'd say she had to stay late to train staff or balance the books. But when I offered to come by and help, she'd say, "No, don't worry about it. It's boring stuff." Except, boring stuff was exactly what I'd been doing for months to get this place open. Why would she shut me out now? The first real red flag. One evening, I decided to surprise her. Nothing dramatic, just a simple gesture. I stopped by the restaurant with her favorite flowers. The dining area was dim, closed for the night. Chairs were stacked on tables, the bar wiped clean. I walked quietly through the soft glow of the hanging lights, calling her name. That's when I heard it. Laughter, coming from the office in the back. Not just laughter. Hers. That full, unguarded laugh she used to give me when we were dating, when the world was still simple. And then his voice. The manager. I froze outside the office door. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Maybe they were just sharing a joke. Maybe it was nothing. But something about the tone in her voice, playful, intimate, made my stomach twist. I stood there for a second, gripping the flowers so tightly that the stems bent. Then, before they noticed me, I turned and left. That night, she came home around midnight. I didn't mention that I'd been at the restaurant. I just asked how her day went. She looked me in the eye and said, "It was exhausting. The numbers still don't add up." And she lied, without hesitation. That's when I knew. The gaslighting. Once you start noticing lies, you see them everywhere. I'd ask why she smelled of cologne that wasn't mine. She'd laugh and say, "Oh, one of the waiters hugged me goodbye. Stop being jealous." I'd ask why she was wearing more makeup than usual on a random Tuesday. She'd say, "We're trying new promo photos for the restaurant." I'd ask why she didn't answer my calls when I knew she wasn't busy. She'd snap, "I can't be glued to my phone all day, you know." Every question turned into me being paranoid. Every concern turned into me not trusting her. And maybe that was the cruelest part. Not just the betrayal itself, but how she made me feel crazy for even suspecting it. But my gut wouldn't let it go. The straw that broke me. It was a Saturday night. I decided, finally, that I needed to see for myself. So I told her I was driving up to Los Angeles to meet an old friend for dinner. She seemed relieved that I'd be out of town. She kissed me goodbye, told me to have fun, and hurried off to the restaurant. Instead of going north, I drove downtown and parked a block away from the restaurant. I waited, watched. Hours passed. The staff left one by one until only two people remained, her and him. I saw them through the office window, standing far too close. He touched her arm. She didn't pull away. She smiled in that way I hadn't seen in years, the smile she used to save for me. I felt something inside me shatter. I wanted to storm in, to confront them, to drag him out by his collar. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed proof. I needed undeniable evidence, because deep down, some part of me still hoped I was wrong. So I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel until my hands ached, and watched the woman I loved melt into someone else's presence. That night, when she came home, she smelled faintly of tequila. She slipped into bed beside me, curled up, and whispered, "I'm so tired." I stared at the ceiling, unable to close my eyes, wondering how I was supposed to sleep next to someone who no longer belonged to me. Part 3. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing beside me. To anyone else, it would have sounded peaceful, the soft rhythm of a woman exhausted from a long day. But to me, it sounded like betrayal. It was a sound that no longer soothed me. It haunted me. I kept asking myself the same question. What if I'm wrong? That doubt was the only thing stopping me from exploding right then and there. If I confronted her without proof, she would deny it, twist it, make me the villain. And I wasn't going to let myself be gaslit again. No, this time, I needed to know beyond any doubt. And so began the darkest weeks of my life. The silent investigation. The next morning, I put on a smile and acted normal. She made coffee, kissed me on the cheek, and told me she had to get to the restaurant early for a delivery. I nodded, pretending not to notice the way she avoided my eyes. As soon as she left, I started my plan. I began with small things. Checking her phone when she showered was useless. She had changed the password. Her laptop? Also locked. She had become careful, too careful. But people always slip. And she had. She had an old tablet she hadn't used in months, one we once shared for travel. On a whim, I powered it on. To my surprise, her messaging apps were still logged in. Not everything was there. Most conversations had been cleared, but I found traces. Small things. Half-deleted threads. Notifications that hinted at longer exchanges. One stood out, a string of messages from the manager. Nothing explicit, just casual reminders. See you tonight. Don't forget the invoices. But there were too many late-night timestamps. Too many messages that didn't sound like business. I took screenshots. I emailed them to myself. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. It felt surreal, like something out of a bad movie. I sat in my car in a strip mall parking lot, meeting a man who introduced himself only as Daniel. He had a sharp suit, a sharper gaze, and a voice that carried the weight of discretion. "You sure you want to know the truth?" he asked me. I nodded, though my throat tightened. "I already know. I need proof." He didn't judge. He just slid a notepad across the table. "Give me their schedules. I'll handle the rest." The first reports. The first week was quiet. Nothing. Just pictures of her at the restaurant, working, laughing, sitting in meetings. At night, she'd come home tired, and I'd almost convinced myself I was paranoid. Almost. Then came week 2. Daniel called me one evening. "You should see this for yourself." I met him the next morning. He laid out a folder on the table. Inside were photographs, grainy, but clear enough to break me. My wife and the manager sitting close in the back office. Her hand brushing his. Him leaning in, whispering something that made her laugh, her head tilting back in that familiar way. Another photo, outside the restaurant, their bodies close, his arm at her waist as they stepped into the night. I felt like the air had been ripped from my lungs. My hands shook as I flipped through the evidence. It wasn't even the physical touch that killed me. It was the intimacy, the ease, the way she looked at him, like he was her world. That used to be me. Daniel didn't say anything. He didn't have to. He just slid the folder closer and said, "There's more if you want me to keep digging." I nodded, numb. Keep going. The web of lies. Meanwhile, at home, the lies multiplied. She told me she was working late on payroll the same night Daniel photographed them having drinks together at a quiet bar 3 blocks from the restaurant. She said she was meeting suppliers on a Sunday, but the photos showed her leaving a hotel with him, her hair messy, his shirt untucked. Each lie was a knife, but I smiled through it. I pretended to believe her, and inside I burned. I started keeping my own log. Dates, times, excuses, proof. I built a case, not just for me, but for the inevitable moment when the truth could no longer be denied. I watched her carefully. The way she slipped out of the room to take calls. The way she guarded her phone like it contained nuclear codes. The way her laughter at home faded, while her laughter at the restaurant grew louder, freer, but never for me. I realized something chilling. She was happiest in the life I had built for her, but without me in it. Cracks in my mask. Holding it all inside was the hardest part. I tried to stay calm, to bide my time, but the cracks showed. One night, she came home late again, smelling faintly of lime and tequila. She slipped into bed and turned her back to me. I whispered into the darkness, "Do you still love me?" There was a long pause. Then, softly, she said, "Of course I do. Why would you even ask that?" But her tone was defensive, not tender. Her words felt rehearsed, empty. I wanted to scream, to throw the evidence in her face. But instead, I just said, "I don't know. You've seemed far away lately." She sighed. "You're imagining things." And then she rolled over and fell asleep. I lay awake, my chest aching, wondering how long she'd been gone from me. Not physically, but emotionally. The final blow. A few weeks later, Daniel gave me the proof I could no longer ignore. He sent me a video. It was from a hidden camera, grainy but unmistakable. My wife and the manager in the restaurant office after hours. He kissed her. She kissed him back, slow and deliberate, no hesitation. Then she pulled him closer. I watched, frozen, as my wife, the woman I had given everything to, betrayed me in the very place I had built to make her dreams come true. The restaurant. Our restaurant. My gift to her. Their playground. Something inside me snapped. The confrontation plan. I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep pretending. I had the proof, the evidence, the truth laid bare in photographs and videos. But how would I use it? That question consumed me. Part of me wanted to explode immediately. To walk into the restaurant in the middle of dinner service, stand on a chair, and play the video for every customer to see. To humiliate them the way they humiliated me. Another part of me wanted silence. To pack my bags, leave everything behind, and vanish. To let her wake up one day and realize she'd lost not just a husband, but the foundation of her dream. But the part of me that finally won was colder, calculated, patient. I decided I would confront her in the place where the betrayal was born, in the restaurant, in that office where it all began. And I wouldn't go in empty-handed. When the time came, she wouldn't just hear my words. She would see the truth. The photos, the videos, the evidence she couldn't deny. And then I would decide what kind of man I wanted to be. The one who burned everything down in revenge, or the one who walked away, leaving her to choke on the ashes of what she destroyed. Part 4. I had replayed the confrontation in my head 100 times. Every scenario ended differently. Some with me screaming, some with her crying, some with me collapsing into silence. But no matter how it ended, one thing never changed. The truth had to come out. The evidence was ready. The folder of photographs, the videos, the log of lies she had fed me. I carried it all in a leather envelope that felt heavier than bricks. It wasn't just paper. It was the weight of betrayal, of years of trust shattered, of love turned into poison. And I was done carrying it alone. The setup. I chose a Tuesday night. The restaurant would be quieter, less crowded. I knew she'd stay late, as always, under the excuse of inventory. I waited until the last customer left, until most of the staff had gone home. Then I walked in. The familiar scents hit me: roasted peppers, cilantro, lime. The music was low, the lights dim. For a brief second, I remembered the night I first opened these doors for her. The tears in her eyes, the way she hugged me and whispered, "You made my dream come true." I shook the memory away. That woman was gone. I walked straight to the office. The door was cracked open. Inside, she sat at the desk with him, the manager. They were laughing over something on his phone. Her hand rested lightly on his knee. The sight almost broke me. But instead of collapsing, I pushed the door fully open. The sound of it slamming against the wall made them both jump. Her eyes widened. His face drained of color. "Mind if I join?" I said, my voice steady, too steady. The confrontation. She scrambled to her feet, smoothing her dress, forcing a smile. "Oh, hey, what are you doing here? I thought you had." "Save it." I cut her off. My voice cracked like a whip. The manager opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. "Not a word from you. You're a guest in something I built, and you've already overstayed your welcome." I set the leather envelope on the desk and pushed it toward her. She stared at it, then at me, confusion flickering into fear. "What's this?" she asked softly. "Proof," I said. "Every late night, every lie, every time you told me you were too busy or too tired. It's all in there. Pictures, videos, witnesses. Do you want me to open it, or would you prefer to keep pretending?" Her hands trembled as she touched the envelope, but she didn't open it. Tears welled in her eyes. "It's not what you think." "Don't," I snapped. My voice shook with fury I could barely contain. "Don't you dare insult me with another lie." The manager shifted uncomfortably. "Look, man." I turned on him, my glare sharp enough to cut. "You. Out." He looked at her, as if waiting for permission. She didn't meet his eyes. Finally, he grabbed his jacket and slipped past me, muttering, "This isn't worth it." The door shut behind him. Silence fell. It was just us, husband and wife, or whatever we were now. The collapse. She sank into the chair, her face buried in her hands. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she whispered. I laughed, bitter and broken. "You didn't mean for what? To sleep with the man I hired to help run your dream? To turn my gift into your playground? To destroy the only thing I thought we had left?" She sobbed. "It wasn't like that. At first, it was just, he understood me. He was here when you weren't. He listened, he cared." "Stop," I said coldly. "You don't get to rewrite this as some tragic love story. You had a husband who broke his back to give you everything, and you threw him away for convenience." She looked up at me, eyes swollen, face streaked with tears. "I still love you." I felt the words hit me like bullets, not because I believed them, but because of how empty they sounded. "No," I said quietly. You love what I gave you. The restaurant, the dream, the attention. But me? You haven't loved me in a long time. The choice. I could have destroyed her right there. I could have dragged her out to the dining room, called the staff, the customers, shown them the evidence. I could have burned her world to the ground the way she burned mine. But as I stood there, looking at the broken shell of the woman I once adored, I felt tired, empty. Revenge wouldn't give me back the years I'd lost. It wouldn't give me back the nights I lay awake, wondering why I wasn't enough. It wouldn't give me back her laugh, her touch, her love. Those were already dead. So I made my choice. I leaned down, picked up the envelope, and tucked it under my arm. This, I said, is for the lawyers. Not for you. Not for him. You'll see it soon enough. Her breath caught. Wait, please, don't do this. Don't take the restaurant. It's all I have. I stared at her, my chest heavy. No, it's all I gave. And now, it's all you've lost. With that, I turned and walked out. The aftermath. The divorce was brutal. She begged. She bargained. She threatened. But the evidence was undeniable. I had everything I needed, and the court sided with me. The restaurant closed within months. She couldn't run it without me. The staff left, the suppliers cut ties, the debts piled up. The dream I built for her turned into rubble. And me? I walked away with scars no one could see. But I also walked away with freedom. For the first time in years, I slept peacefully. For the first time in years, I breathed without the weight of lies pressing down on me. And as for her, last I heard, she was drifting, working odd jobs, telling people she used to own a restaurant once, pretending it was still a proud story, not a cautionary tale. But I don't hate her anymore. I don't love her either. I just don't care. Because in the end, I realized something she never did. Dreams built on betrayal always collapse. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply walking away.